Доброго ранку усім присутнім в прес-залі, а також усім тим, хто дивиться та слухає.
Good morning, everybody who are present in the press room and to those who are watching us on stream. Today's our topic is the year of Ukrainian resilience. What are the secret of the Ukrainian resilience formula? With this, I give the floor to our moderator. Good morning, everybody who had come today to the press room, and good morning to those who are being connected to stream, Zoom, etc. And we're expecting to have quite numerous audience today. This means that we have the whole panel of panelists today, and we have many people, quite broad audience, who are eager to listen to this discussion. So, as my colleague has announced, the topic for public discussion is the year of Ukrainian resilience. What is the secret of the Ukrainian resilience formula? We have a panel of reputed experts. We are going to discuss what experience we have gained during this last year, and what lessons we shall take for the future, what way we have covered, and what way we have ahead, and we have how and where we have to assist our defenders. And those defenders are our friends, our relatives, our beloved ones, and each of us in these tough times has to do what she has to do in her own position. The initiative is implemented with the financial support of the European Union in the framework of the project Building Resilience and Conflict Through Dialogue. So, as to our today's speakers, our interlocutors are Mr. Andriy Zahorodniuk, Chairman of the Board of the Center for Defense Strategies, former Minister of Defense in 2019-2020. Then Mr. Yaroslav Zhalilo, Deputy Director of the National Institute of Strategic Studies. Ms. Yulia Tyshchenko, Co-founder of the National Platform for Resilience and Social Cohesion. Ms. Volodymyr, Executive Director of the Reanimation Package of Reforms. Ms. Yulia Bidenko, Sociologist, Coordinator of the National Platform in the Kharkiv region. And Mr. Dmytro Zolotukhin, Head of the Information Monitoring and Intelligence Department. And the final remarks will be made by Mr. Volodymyr Lupatsiy, co-founder of the National Platform for Resilience and Social Cohesion. So that's all with the representation, and now I would like to open discussion and give the floor to Mr. Andriy Zahorodniuk. The first question: how do you think, due to what actions or what was the secret that allowed us to stop the aggressor in the first months, and then the second question will be about the prospects for the future. Well, Mr. Zahorodniuk is not with us yet. Then my question is to Yaroslav Zhalilo: how to ensure the balance between the revenues and expenditures of the budget, and how to ensure the sustainability and development of the economy, which is the background for the resilience of the country. Today, the discussion, what we have to do to survive, is not enough. We have to find the answer to a question, how we can develop. And of course, initial Ukrainian resilience surprised not only our enemies, but some Ukrainians too. The resilience comprises the resilience of the front line and the resilience of the rear, so to say. The resilience of the rear is extremely important in the context of the false narratives which are broadly disseminated by our enemies, that Ukraine is prone to disappearance and that Ukraine actually is not existent. So now coming to our question of the economic resilience, I would rather think about 5 pillars which allowed us to survive through the first month of the war. The first pillar appeared to be quite well-developed system of the entrepreneurial initiatives in many sectors, which proved to be vital for the survival of the country. Food sector, transport sector, services sector, etc. The next pillar is transport communications. The major element in it appeared to be the railway company of Ukraine and other railway companies, but also all sorts of transportation companies. The next was the vibrant system of communications. The next element or pillar was the extended powers and authorities and responsibilities, consequently, of the local communities, which demonstrated high resilience and ability to provide necessary resources in the shock situation. And the next pillar was a very vibrant and proactive civil society, which supported volunteer movement and contributed much to the volunteer movement. And then the last but not least was the international assistance, which was, I think, the cumulative result of Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations and the continuous effort in that area. Now more deeply about some pillars. As for the communication, even despite the blackouts this winter, we managed to ensure some crucial elements in the communication system. For example, the electronic payment systems. The next, resilience of the business. The authorities should not think that business is able to survive under any conditions. The government has to take measures to provide more favorable conditions for business development, including eradication of corruption, or at least curbing corruption. and the businesses have to think about new business models. I believe one of the good examples is the National Bank activity, which allowed to build up good and reliable bank communication system, which unfortunately is not spread evenly and extended to other sectors all around the country. So the National Bank has to think how to develop new system of credits for businesses, etc. Then regional and local developments, especially self-governance of those communities. We have to strengthen capacity of local communities for development. Civil society. As of today, civil society requires mental shift from the country of volunteers to the country of consolidated civil society, which means that the civic activity, which is now channeled into the volunteer movement, should be turned into, should be converted somehow into the social stability. And last but not least, we have to reactivate the elements in the country which are proactive recipients of the international aid and assistance. That is to strengthen connections between local communities, businesses, and involvement of all that potential into the all-European projects. In this case, the international aid will become the catalyst for the Ukrainian development and working cohesively in this way, the RIA will be able to respond and satisfy multiple needs of the front line and contact line. Thank you, Yaroslav. Thank you for showing us the set of issues and problems for the future in the rear. Now we have Ms. Andriy Zahorodniuk with us, and the question to you: what phenomena, what what components to the resilience formula were demonstrated by Ukraine during the last year? That is, what allowed Ukraine to stand firm, to stop the enemy, and to regain some territories back. And the second question will be about the possibility of the war to exhaustion, the exhaustive and protracted war. All of us know the issues that this war raised. The first surprise was that Ukraine appeared rather military capable, and that the military readiness to the war was much higher than was expected by the West and by the enemies. But we cannot count for this factor in future, and actually the exhausting war, the war for exhaustion has been reached already, and beginning from June, actually, we have been observing the tactics which demonstrated that they've accepted this war to exhaustion as their strategy. For example, they have stopped the offensives in several directions. They had announced general mobilization, actually, although this was discussed as partial mobilization. Also, they have launched all the military enterprises and forced them to work round the clock. All those factors from long ago have been showing that they are getting ready to the very protracted conflict. They understand that they have much more people, they have stronger economy, and while Ukraine have much lesser human resources, much lesser financial resources, and the enemy believes that someday our Western partners would get tired of Ukrainian of support and will decide that Ukraine is becoming a bit more expensive, and that is what we can observe in the mass media. Well, this can be challenged by the fact that as of today, the Western countries store or keep some billion, sufficient number of billion of Russian money, and which is much larger than those money that are donated to Ukraine. And nevertheless, we hear now and then that some Western voices keep saying that let us not irritate Russia, not accept Ukraine to NATO, not risk with the Third World War, let us stop supporting Ukraine. What does this mean for us? That we have to mobilize all the internal Ukrainian enterprises to work for the military purposes. Here I mean the spare parts for the military equipment. And we may build up or use our existing industrial facilities to produce spare parts for the military equipment. As of today, we procure the same spare parts from many countries for money, and we can save this money inside the country. There are risks that someday the spare parts arriving from those countries may run out, and the second, that we cannot account for the Western support all the time. And the most important issue with the munition is the exhaustive resource, and you have to produce it all the time. While launching production of the munition is a cumbersome process and quite expensive process, and in order to launch such production manufacturing in Ukraine, we have to develop specific policy aimed at this. This is risk number one, absence of our own production of ammunition. And as of now, there is a chance, there is an opportunity to build up that. The next opportunity is the land lease. The land lease has not started to develop yet, because by now that was not needed that much. But in the military sphere, that's true. We do not need Lend-Lease as of now, but Lend-Lease could be used for bringing into the country necessary equipment for rolling out the manufacturing of ammunition, as I described. That is to build up more military plants. This would open and create new resources which will strengthen Ukraine's resilience, military resilience. In other aspects, the readiness of our Western partners to stand by Ukraine, by the Ukrainian victory is strong, and it looks like that we can rely on that. This is positive factor. Despite the attempts to shake the anti-Putin coalition, nevertheless, the Western partners, they stand strong by Ukraine. But we have to think about our own resilience. Thank you, Andriy. Actually, you have slightly raised the question which I would like to ask to Ms. Yulia Tyshchenko. Would will be considered as a victory? And this brings us to the question, to the post-war build-up and reconstruction. Thank you for this question. To me, it is a partially unexpected question, because we more think about today's business, today's issues, not thinking about what the actual victory would mean. There is a good saying that winning a victory do not lose peace. And this means that fighting for the victory, we have to think about future gaining of peace and situation in society after gaining a victory. That is, that military practices in the society should not transfer into the peaceful life after the war, although this may sound a bit philosophically. Nevertheless, the occupation of Ukrainian territory and regaining back our territories up to the borders of 1991 suggests that we have to bring up back not only the territories but also people on those territories. When we think in this context, we can imagine some measures which will be needed both for Crimea and for the east of Ukraine, Donetsk and Lugansk regions. This will comprise also security measures, societal measures. Part of Ukrainian resilience includes also civil society resilience and adaptability of society, adaptability of people. And this adaptability allowed Ukraine to survive. We have to understand how this society reached our today's point. This adaptability was well trained during the previous 8 years. By the moment of February 24th, 2022, we had been existing in the situation of war, protracted war for 8 years, which actually began with the occupation of Crimea and later with annexation of Crimea, and then with the an attempt to occupy Donetsk and Lugansk regions. So we had to develop the response models and behavioral models, which allowed us not to be fully shocked in February 2022. We also have trained our ability to get united and to build up solidarity, which at the civil society level, and that was also demonstrated during the first months of the war. But how stable this ability will remain with time, as of now, is not that clear. Also, the issue of communication between civil society, between people, ordinary people, and the authorities is becoming more and more important. In this context, we have to consider what are the most trustworthy sources of information for Ukrainians. These are Telegram channels and friends and relatives. This suggests that today's communication between people in power and society is a bit encapsulated at the governmental level, at the authorities level, while we have to decide how to shape up proper communication between the authorities and society. Perhaps we have to think how substitute the urgent response schemes with the more continuous response, more routine response ways or means. If I manage to do that, that is to channel up this ability of people to build up solidarity into regular societal channels. This will allow to transform this ad hoc civil energy into a long-term forms. Then thinking about future images of victory, future images of restoration of the country shows that people think about that as about a distant, long-term future. While I believe that today we have to involve local communities and businesses into discussion what has to be restored, what has to be done. And doing that, it is quite useful to look at the European experience. So one of the tasks to support our civil resilience, to strengthen the sectoral cooperation, is to bring up into this mix the elements of European integration, which will bring innovative impetus into all that mix. Speaking about institutional capacity of civil organization, I should say that back in 2013, the level of volunteer movement was in compliance with the standards of European social non-governmental organizations. As of today in Ukraine, we have civil society organizations which are even stronger than the European ones, and they may even share this experience in building up resilience with other countries, partners, etc. These are quite useful, well-tested practices which were gained with experience in emergency situations. Just one example, yesterday I spoke to the Finnish experts and we discussed civil response to the crisis, and we found out that in Ukraine we have unique experience in that, and this could be offered as a rewarding lesson to our partners. The image of resilient Ukraine had become part of Ukrainian brand all around the world. I understand that some part of this formula is competitive advantage of Ukraine. That is what we can offer to other countries which might be useful for them. Now let us go to the civil volunteering, civil society volunteering. And I'm happy to give the floor to Oleh, Executive Director of the Reanimation Package of Reforms Coalition, and ask her how to make the gained experience systemic, how to transform some firefighting practices into routine, into useful routine approach. Thank you for this event. after a year of the full-scale invasion. Discussing the resilience, I would provide some figures from the recent surveys. 94% of Ukrainians trust in victory, trust that Ukraine will prevail, and approximately the same percentage of Ukrainians believe that the victory means revival of Ukrainian territory in the borders of 1991. That is, expectations of Ukrainians are rather high and reflect the readiness of Ukrainians to stand firm against the enemies and fight for their land. Of course, we do not have similar statistics for February 2022. But I think that our initial victories convinced the entire country that we have resources to win. This is precious experience, and this experience is rather interesting that through the centuries, Ukraine preserved the idea of a nation even without its statehood, and it preserved its language, it preserved its deep Ukrainian culture. Actually, it has preserved its Ukrainian spirit. I'm not ready to discover now and to say exactly what is the secret of this Ukrainian ability to preserve all those things through the centuries. Then we had passed through the experience of several revolutions and became sure that we were able to counteract to the oppressive regimes. And from the Revolution of Dignity, we have learned that civil society may change the governmental structures, and that civil society may to some extent substitute and change the governmental structures at some critical moments, critical situations. Some people in the West even did not expect that, but Ukraine appeared to be not a failed state, and even corruption had not destroyed Ukraine to the extent which might become tragic. Our national bank had survived, our currency had survived, and first after the Revolution of Dignity, then during the first year of the full-scale war, we demonstrated how resilient we are. And with this internal resource inside our nation, we are becoming more and more united, unlike the authoritarian Russian Federation. But thinking about internal resources and our unity, we have to look for the future, for the next year. The level of trust in our victory, the level of willingness to prevail, of course, will remain strong, but it will transform into different shapes and into different forms, and we have to think how to support this trust and think how to maintain it at a high level. Of course, we are very grateful to the armed forces of Ukraine and we who continuously have been showing the resilience, and we have now convinced many of our Western partners that we are able not only to resist and not only to not to surrender our territories, but that we are able to regain our territories. And in this opposition to the enemy, we do not see other way out than to prevail. I have heard somehow fatalistic note in your speech that we do not have other option than to prevail, and this is quite interesting. This ability to resistance had grew up through the centuries, and this trust into future victory and the readiness to fight had survived somewhere internally in the nation through the centuries. Thinking about the war, we think in terms of rear and the contact line. But in Ukraine, we have all sorts of territories. We have the pre-front territories, we have occupied territories, we have deoccupied territories, and we have the deep rear territories. All those regions, they develop in with different paces. They contribute differently to the country's development, but they altogether create the multiplying effect, and how they can contribute to strengthen this national development. This is my question to Yulia Bidenko, sociologist and coordinator of the National Platform for Resilience and Social Cohesion in Kharkiv region. Thank you, Oleg. I believe that that our platform is a good framework which allows to bring together practices and institutions. Some days ago, I came back from the George Marshall Fund workshop, which united experts in several areas who had been thinking about the scenarios for the end of war in Ukraine. And they convinced me that we have to get ready for a protracted war, the exhaustive war. Now coming back to the resilience of the regions, there are three key elements that allowed to ensure resilience in the communities in the first weeks of the war. In some local communities, people faced actually the situation of humanitarian disaster, but those communities managed to overcome that. The successful decentralization reform resulted in a situation that new heads of local communities were ready to take responsibility in this force majeure situation, and they established good communication with civil society, and that allowed local communities to overcome the humanitarian crisis, etc. This suggests that decentralization, which is happening now, should be curbed and overcome soon. Otherwise, we may become weak due to this decentralization. The second key factor was the strengthening of Ukrainian self-identity, and this was not the process that started to happen with the beginning of the war. This was the process which was launched with the Ukraine's gaining of its independence, or regaining of its independence in 1991, but then was strengthened by the revolutions, especially by the Revolution of Dignity. So that started with the self-identification as Ukrainians, united with the self-identification as the residents of some specific territory, and eventually that manifested in the self-identification of Ukrainians as Europeans. And all that was clearly shown and demonstrated by society during the revolutions. I agree with previous speakers who characterized development of the civil society through the years. I believe that in the regions during the last years, the civil society started to build up the network, the whole network of local initiatives. Now I can notice Alexander Sushko, who joined us. Perhaps he will confirm. And I would like to remind you about the whole bulk of initiatives. In March, I also had the chance to join one of the local initiatives, regional initiatives, a small one, but which allowed to ensure supplies. For example, in Kharkiv region, we were a volunteer organization supplying necessary stuff from Lviv region to Kharkiv region through the entire territory of Ukraine. This suggests that we have to strengthen these practices. So that resilience that which was grown by Kharkiv residents through the years of the protracted conflict in Donbass, that resilience allowed us to raise up as one in February 2022, and this was equally true about small businesses who provided food and catering to local residents, up to big businessmen. Even in Kharkiv, university, I observed first-year students who eagerly joined the volunteering, and that created the whole network of people of all generations joining this volunteer work. This convinces me that we have a chance to build up the civil society, although we may observe some limitations, the loss of human resources, the exhaustion, and the security issues which diminish our capacity to start reconstruction as of now. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the full-fledged reconstruction seems unable, seems to be doubtful, fully doubtful, or doubtful in the full scale in some local communities. Thank you, Yulia. And about cooperation between volunteers, civil society, and governmental bodies. As Yaroslav mentioned at the beginning, the communication component is one of the pillars, one of the strong, cohesive instruments, and so the information and communication is the area of Dmytro Zolotukhin. But nevertheless, in in the expert community, we more and more come to discussions about the information sovereignty. So, Dmytro, what do we lack, and what do we have to improve in our communication area at the lower, at the grassroots level, at the level of volunteer movement? To steer up our discussion, I would like to remind you the words of one journalist who once said, all the bees were carrying honey while only one bee was carrying heavy crude oil. And of course, we all remember how at the beginning of the wars, Ukraine was given 72 hours to surrender. And I would like to remind you that President Zelensky's behavior miraculously created conditions for the survival of Ukrainian institutions. The informational resilience is in the center of Ukrainian authorities back in 2019 under President Poroshenko. The National Information Council has passed the doctrine of the national information security, and we based our assumptions on the fact that we, in the democratic society, we cannot impose restrictions, while we have to be proactive in development of the information space and produce good content for the for the information space. As of today, the Ministry of Information, Ministry of Culture, and Ministry of Youth representatives in their actions, in their statements, state the things which are opposite to the doctrine which I mentioned. They do not think that we have to create and disseminate Ukrainian content. This suggests that we do not have resilience in the information area. The major community which we have today, this is a community of people who have strong intention to create something valuable for Ukraine. But the fact that we are numerous does not suggest that we are numerous in societal dimension. This creates an illusion that we have informational resilience. During the last 72 hours, the information space in Ukraine had been filled with information about Rodan and about issues with the young people who consume subculture, hostile subculture. When I see the invitations to prohibit anime, to prohibit some internet influences, I understand that this is useless. The Institute of Information Security, which is chaired by Anton Didenko, recently published the white book, How to Counteract Disinformation in Ukraine, where we suggest to create, where we demonstrated that both two centers of counteraction to disinformation do not help. We have to use the concept of resilience, which is successfully used in many European countries. In 2020, the National Security and Defense Council Chairman, Mr. Danilov, announced that the National Resilience Center had to be created in the National Security and Defense Council. I believe that that was the right idea, but an infantile idea of the president to create something which could be seen and touched, it prevailed, and the Minister of Culture Youth, Culture and Sports, Mr. Borodiansky, started to draft the law on counteraction to disinformation. Of course, activists, information activists, opposed that draft law very much. And of course, the minister, as of that time, made all possible mistakes. Then Minister Tyshchenko came and has said to the centers of counteraction to disinformation. Another minister said the same. And actually, both centers turned into media inside the government. The Center for Strategic Communications and Security, they have their own website, they produce reports, they produce some content. They have the filter project who spreads TikTok messages, Viber chats, etc. Actually, this is a media center. Then we have United TV Marathon Watches, the Resilience, also instrument. They are actually imposing the reality which is which exists in the imagination of official authorities, but this does not protect us from the problems. As of now, we have the issues with the mobilization resource to the armed forces of Ukraine. This appears in the Western media, who report that Ukrainian disabled people get summons to the armed forces of Ukraine. And at the same time, many people could see the good advertising of the assault forces, new assault forces of Ukraine. And but again, we come to a situation that the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy do not see their role in communication. So summing up, dear friends, that's quite good that we have survived through that 12 months that have passed. But at the moment when we will eventually prevail over Putin and his country, we will need to start the war with ourselves and to understand what is wrong with us. What is wrong with Russia is quite clear. The Russia is not existent anymore. George Soros has said that Russia is unimportant. We should look more carefully on China now. But about ourselves, we have survived by now by the God's love. Now we have to think how to survive relying on ourselves. We have no resilience, but nevertheless, the resilience is here, especially at the grassroots level. That is, we have to continue our work, and resilience means the readiness of each person, the readiness of everybody to work for the sake of resilience and to do everything on her own place. And in each nation, there is something fundamental which allows people to survive. But nevertheless, I agree with you that quite often in information area, we see the technocratic approach. We have 5 minutes more, and we have Mr. Volodymyr Lupatsiy, whose responsibility is to sum up our today's discussion. Can you hear me? Yes, we have heard and discussed different dimensions of resilience. I will try to sum up and come back to the key element. Resilience is new strategic approach which are in the center of attention of the EU countries and NATO. The Ukraine specificity is that Ukraine had become the exercise field where the multi-dimensional resilience model is being tested this year. Neither country faced such large-scale 15 numbers of IDPs than the counteraction and resistance to the Second Army of the world, than information terror and attempts to discredit Ukraine in the international diplomatic arena. And nevertheless, Ukraine nevertheless managed to survive, and we tried to understand that the sources of resilience, the key resource are people and their ability to use internal resource and potential that they have for the future. We have to recognize that we have multiple practices of resilience, and we do not have the institutionalized policy of resilience. Somebody has to check the president's implementation of the president's orders. That is the implementation of the concept of resilience. Resilience is not only a threat, this is also the philosophy, and social cohesion is also social unity. Actually, this is the social capital, social regain, and the resources, social resource in Ukraine. And by the way, we should think about material support of resilience. We have to dedicate a special budget line to the resilience expenses, and we have to think about the ecosystem of resilience in Ukraine. Those people who understand that we need a policy in this area, they have to consolidate, self-organize, and popularize this new approach in society. Thank you. I would love to give you an opportunity to ask questions, but unfortunately we run out of time. That's why I encourage you to ask questions on our web portal, on our social networks, where you can directly contact with our today's speakers and other experts of the National Resilience Platform. And I hope that you will make a good use of this opportunity. With this, I would like to thank to all those who watched our discussion via stream, and special thanks to the interpreters, and thank you for this discussion. And let's continue to